Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate, obviously, how difficult it can be to find time in your busy schedules for sessions and webinars. So we really do appreciate your support and the interest that you've shown in our subject matter today. So why are we here? Securing your mobile devices and modern management and protection. I think it's really fair to say that the way that we work today and how we use our mobile devices has changed. Mobile phones are now a core part of how people access their emails, data, and even business systems. For many users, mobile phone is a main gateway to their organization. At the same time, the security risks have also increased, as we've seen, on the news and with recent hacks that have taken place. So data no longer sits safely on networks, people work from anywhere, and devices are often personally owned as well. That means traditional network-based security models don't always work or don't work anymore. So this is why securing mobile devices has become a business priority and not just about an IT one. It's about protecting data, maintaining compliance, and reducing risk without it slowing people down. So today you have myself. I'm Vicky Fallows, and I am head of direct sales for mobile in Chess. I have been with the business now 2 years, but actually in the industry for over 24 years. I'm joined today by Mark, who I am sure will give a little bit of an introduction to himself later on. Mark is one of our leading consultants around device security, and he has a wealth of experience, which is why I'm going to keep my piece short and let Mark really go into and show and demonstrate his experience in our subject matter today. So we have a mixture of customers that have joined us. Once again, thank you. Some customers are already with Chess and have been loyal with us for some period of time. We have customers who are just part of their initial conversations at the moment, and others are still within their decision-making process. So for the sense of all that, I just thought it would be worth setting a little bit of a foundation of who we are in regards to Chess. But before we go into that, I just want to run through what the agenda will look like. So welcome and introduction. Who are we? Who are Chess? Modern day security risks, the Intune app protection and conditional access overviews with management scenarios, and we will then go into Q&A. Just so you know, there is a Q&A button on the screen that you can click, and you can place all your questions within there, which we can come to and answer for you at the end of the session today. So Chess, who are we? So we are one of the UK's technology service providers, 240 people strong, and what that does and what that means is we are absolutely able to offer a very account management consultative style approach. It's dedicated support, and we're really proud that 70% of our customers have been with us for more than 5 years, while 40% have been with us for more than 10 years, which is amazing. We currently have a turnover of 50 million, which means we are set up for sustainability, which is fantastic. What you will see on this slide in the bottom left of the screen is we have a portfolio of products that we service, and how we tend to differentiate ourselves is we only work with the best in breed. Network supplier vendors are all, and all the suppliers that we choose to use are bringing first-in-class products and services to the market, and we do all the investigation work for you, which means that you don't have to. We are your consultant and trusted advisor. So some of the products that we and within our portfolio is Connect, Cloud, Devices, Digital Security, and a mix of a lot of other services. And we have a huge mixture of customers as well in terms of size. And they fall across 5 parts of our segments. So that's business, corporate, enterprise size customers. We also have a great presence within public sector, and we have a great partner segmentation as well. The wheel. So this is Chess's wheel, how we go to market. So what you will see is the outer circle is all about the outcomes that we really want for you, our customers. We want to support efficiency, we want to reduce your costs, we want to unlock your AI potential, but also keep you secure. So that's our aim and that's our purpose. The inner circle is the 4 pillars that we work to. We're an agnostic business, which means that we focus on your needs, your requirements. So the consultation part of the circle is really crucial. This ensures that we truly understand your business and we solely focus on the needs and we best place the services that we have for you. That then enables us to deliver a solution that really fits, which is the second part of the wheel. We utilise our experienced delivery teams to ensure that you are set up seamlessly and smoothly. We do also put a lot of focus into adoption as well. And this is how we ensure that we fully embed a solution into your organisation with the maximum benefit. And then lastly, we have a fully UK dedicated support structure. We only provide a solution we can fully support from point of connection and implementation right through to renewal and beyond. Our solutions. So these are our solutions, and if you're interested, obviously, in any other area of our portfolio, which we will not be discussing today, we would be more than happy to set up a follow-up call with you and talk through these offerings. But that brings me on really nicely in terms of introducing Mark and where I sign off. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Vicky. Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Mark Ison. I'm the lead for desktop and devices within Chess. I've been with Chess now for a couple of years, having come over as part of an acquisition. Previously, we were Silver Sands, and I've been combined over across the 2 companies, been working in this space for well over 15 years. And as I say, specialising in previously System Centre Configuration Manager and Group Policy, now moving into the modern world of Intune and mobile device management. So as a starting point to this, I want to just spend a bit of time talking about the modern security risks that are out there today. When it comes to mobile devices, these are devices that are going to be used more than any other device that a user might own. And in this modern world, there is an expectancy that the users would be able to use them for email, chat, and accessing data. And even from a business standpoint, that's something we would like to encourage because it's only going to increase productivity, knowing that people are able to respond instantly rather than having to wait until they're back at their desk. Now, obviously, appreciate this causes a bit of a problem for IT, as it really does widen the potential attack surface for bad actors to take advantage of. So the first of these kind of major risks is data leakage. And this is the most common and costly risk out there when using mobile devices for work. Essentially, this happens when sensitive company information like emails, documents, or customer data leaves the device or leaves the organization unintentionally or without any kind of authorization. So on mobiles, this can be as simple as user copying and pasting corporate data from an email or a Teams chat into a local application, a unmanaged location such as WhatsApp or a native mail client, or even saving that file to an unsecure location, which could even potentially be the device itself. We've seen this kind of thing all the time. Well, you would have seen this kind of thing time and time again in the news, even from some of the biggest government agencies out there. So the challenge is that mobile devices blur the line between personal and corporate use, and without proper controls, it's very easy for data to move out of that secure environment without even really thinking twice about it. The second risk is malware. I'm going to give an example. It was back in 2002, I believe, where Uber was compromised by a malicious app that landed on a device. The app stole the user's credentials while they were using it for another service, and the user, once the attacker had the credentials, they then started a social engineering campaign against that user to convince them to approve an MFA request, which unfortunately they did. Another kind of good example of that was a customer from a couple of years ago where one of the directors was using their phone as a sat nav in the car. They needed to know which directions they were taking. It kept popping up asking for MFA, and they just got fed up and pressed yes, and that then let the person in. Mobile devices are being increasingly targeted by malicious software, whether that's through compromised apps or phishing links, unsafe downloads. Once the device is infected, though, attackers can gain access to almost anything that they want to monitor user activity and use that device as a gateway into the wider network. But unlike traditional desktops, mobile users are often outside of the corporate network, which makes detecting and controlling these threats even more challenging. The last risk I'm going to cover is unauthorized access. So this is ultimately when someone gains access to corporate data or systems without proper authentication. This could be due to a weak password, lost or stolen device, or lacking multi-factor authentication enforcement. Mobile devices are particularly vulnerable here because they're portable and frequently used in public or unsecured areas. If a device falls into the wrong hands and isn't properly secured, it can provide direct access to emails, apps, and sensitive company systems. So with those risks in mind, I'm going to provide you with some overviews of the solutions that Microsoft provide to help mitigate these risks as best we can. The first and main solution of the day is Intune. So for those of you who are unaware, Intune is Microsoft's cloud-based endpoint management service that's used to manage the full life cycle of the device from deployment to retirement and everything in between. Now, while we'll mainly be focusing on iOS and Android devices as part of this session, Intune obviously does encompass Windows, Mac OS, Linux devices. So, you know, a full complement of the types of devices that we used in the business today. With Intune, it all starts with enrollment. This is your entry point into Intune and device management. Now, the enrollment process can be automated as part of the device deployment, or done manually by the user. Intune integrates with Apple Business, formerly Apple Business Manager, they rebranded that just a couple of days ago, and Google Zero Touch to simplify and streamline the deployment of devices through pre-configured enrollment profiles, which dictate how the out-of-box setup process is completed. Then you have configuration, and when we talk about configuration, we're really talking about how you would standardize and control the setup and ongoing functionality of the devices without physically needing to get to those devices. Defining, configuring things like security requirements, Wi-Fi, VPN connections, and the overall user experience. For iOS and Android devices, this also includes enforcing restrictions such as disabling features requiring encryption, screen locks, disabling cameras, Bluetooth, network connections, whatever it is you do or don't want the device to be able to do. The goal really is to ensure that all of your devices are set up consistently. There may be different use case scenarios, and we'll discuss those as we move further on. But obviously, it's just determining what the baseline is and making sure that everyone meets that. And obviously, yeah, just making sure it's in line with company policy from the moment it's enrolled. Intune supports all MDM settings made available by Apple and Google, and they have been committed for many years to make new settings configurable from day one released from the vendor. Depending on the enrollment method that you choose, it will impact the level of configuration available to you. And again, we'll cover that in a little bit more detail a bit later on. So next we move on to compliance. Compliance is, in most cases, used as a reporting tool. You stipulate what must be present on the device, a minimum OS version, a PIN, a passcode, and what the requirements are, minimum length, what the device state is, has it been jailbroken, has it been rooted, is it encrypted, and is app integrity in place. So yeah, first of all, being able to report on that and identify where non-compliance is and if there's anything that needs to be remediated. When the device is marked as non-compliant or is identified as being non-compliant, you can configure follow-on actions like sending notifications to the users to let them know that this device is no longer compliant and potentially what they need to do to resolve it. Could be simply contact IT, could be you need to set a PIN code, so depending on what on how the configuration's set up. And then on top of that, something which we'll be going into detail later is conditional access, where the overall compliance or the compliance state of the device can ultimately determine whether that device is allowed to access the corporate environment in the first place. So when it comes to that compliance, you can configure certain grace periods. So with the compliance, configuration will do a lot of the heavy lifting to make sure that the PIN is there and there's certain security features in place. But for example, Intune can't necessarily force a operating system update on mobile devices. You can do with that is if the version comes out, you can set what your minimum version required is. If the enrolled device doesn't meet it, it can send a warning to people or to the user to say, the new version is out, you need to update it. If you don't, within 7 days, you'll lose access. It gives them time, a bit of grace period to go and sort that out. But for example, if the device has been jailbroken or rooted, you're likely going to want just an instant block to go in place. And conditional access can be used along with that compliance to then control that behavior. We then have applications. Intune giving you the ability to manage and deploy apps across all the operating system types, whether they are internally third-party apps, store-based apps, or internally developed apps. For mobile operating systems, in the apps that are in the Play, the public Play or App Store, can be synchronized to your app catalog for deployment, and you can also upload your own custom in-house developed apps if you have any. Intune integrates seamlessly with the Apple Volume Purchase Program and managed Google Play, so you have the ability to go and bulk purchase apps, which can be synchronized to Intune for distribution to those corporate devices. And while the device is enrolled and being managed, we get some remote actions to be able to perform on the device. Depending on the operating system and the enrollment type, again, it will dictate what actions you have available to you, but they could include things like remote policy sync if you've made a recent update, a remote wipe or reset of the device, geolocating, disabling activation lock on iOS devices, resetting passcodes or PIN numbers if the user happens to have forgotten them, or potentially initiating a remote assistance session if supported. And then the last element is around reporting. Intune provides an extensive set of pre-configured device monitoring reports like configuration compliance, update status, hardware inventory, application inventory, encryption enforcement, and much more. And as well as these standard reports, you've also got access to a feature called Endpoint Analytics. And this takes a deep dive into the information that it has about devices to start being able to report on device stability, device performance, and application stability and performance. So if a user is reporting that an app keeps crashing on their device, you can start to understand, is that app crashing across multiple people? Is it across a particular device that's causing the problem, or is it the operating system version? We've just issued, you've issued a new feature update. People that have updated to the new version are seeing the crashes. People on the old version aren't. So maybe potentially putting a hold in place while you understand what that problem is or update the application. Now, in addition to this, we also have the reporting side of things. we also now have Copilot for security. And since November last year, Microsoft has been rolling this out to existing customers that have Microsoft E5 licenses. It's all consumption based, and within that, depending on how many licenses you get X amount of compute per month. Copilot for security is designed to help you quickly analyze threats, investigate incidents, and make informed decisions using natural language prompts, as all Copilot agents do. It pulls together data from Entra, Defender, Purview, and Intune to give you a complete visibility across all your devices, including who's using them, how they're being used, and any potential security threats. Through its integration with Intune, it allows you to interact directly with the device and its compliance policy data, allowing you to very simply go and ask questions about a particular device. Is there anything? Are there any vulnerabilities on this device? Is there any misconfiguration? Is there anything that you're aware of that we should be investigating? And then it will be able to provide you with targeted recommendations to resolve any problems. So, as I said earlier, ultimately, like any Copilot, its purpose is to reduce the time you spend finding problems, so you've got more time to spend on fixing them. So the last bit I'd just quickly cover on as far as an Intune goes is just a slide to help you understand how Intune is structured in its costing and plans. You have a plan one, which essentially includes everything that we're going to be covering today, with the exception of conditional access. That's part of the Entra suite of products. But within that plan one, you get your automated device deployment, configuration, compliance, security controls and baselines, app deployment and management, and the endpoint analytics, priced at roughly £6.20 per user per month. And it's including all E3 and E5, Microsoft E3 and E5 plans and business premium. You can then up that to a plan 2, which adds additional features for automatic VPN connections on an app level, support for augmented reality and virtual reality headsets, large screen meeting devices, over-the-air firmware update integration, which is actually limited to Android devices and the Zebra vendor at the moment. And that's roughly £3.10 per user on top of the plan 1. There are a couple of extra bits not necessarily on the slide. One of them is an Intune suite of products, which is a set of add-ons. What you get there is an endpoint privilege management for just-in-time elevations, enterprise app management for providing Microsoft provides you a set of prepackaged third-party apps, which they'll maintain and update. There's a remote help solution for remote assistance, and advanced analytics, which expands on that and the endpoint analytics I mentioned earlier to give you a full and complete timeline of the device, including reboots, crashes, updates, everything. Now, all of that additional functionality is around £7.70 per month in addition to your plan 1. However, later on this year, the solutions within that Intune suite are going to be divvied out between E3 and E5. So keep an eye out, because some new functionality might be coming your way if you have one of those E3 or E5 licenses at the moment. So that's everything kind of Intune based. And although app protection is a feature of Intune, I've kind of given it its own dedicated space due to the importance of it with the topic that we're kind of covering today. So in general, what we find is that most organizations are less concerned about the device these days. It's all about the data. Whether they've paid for it or not, we're not overly concerned, because if we lose a device and there's nothing on it, we've lost potentially £1,000. If we lose a device that data is freely accessible, then we could be looking at fines in potential thousands. So app protection is designed, or is there to apply controls to protect organizational data at the application level rather than the device level. best part about these is that it doesn't require the device to be enrolled in Intune to take effect. When a user with a policy, with an app protection policy assigned, signs into one of the targeted apps, it immediately secures it. So although it doesn't require enrollment, it does require that there is an anchor app on the device. This is used to handle the registration, the device registration, policy evaluation, and storage of the policy data. On an iOS device, this is the authenticator, and on Android, it's the company portal. These apps, they don't need to be used, they don't need to sign in, actively encourage people not to use them. They just have to be present on the device in the first place. And if the user doesn't already have it, when they sign into one of those apps, it will prompt them and let them know that they need to put that there first. App protection initially provides protection around or what refers to as conditional launch. So it's the first stage, and it determines whether the app can be launched and accessed at all. We can configure requirements such as minimum operating system version, account status, so has the user's account been disabled, and whether the device has been jailbroken or rooted. And if any of these conditions aren't met, access can be blocked immediately or allowed a temporary warning and a remediation window. So similar to what I mentioned with that conditional access earlier, apart from this is outside of conditional, this is purely app protection saying there's a new version of the operating system, you need to update this to continue to regain access. We can then apply access security. So this ensures that regardless of the enrollment status, that the user is going to be required to apply app level authentication. This is done through either a PIN or the requirement to re-enter corporate credentials. We can also include the options of how and configure how often re-authentication is required, and whether whether users would be allowed to use biometrics like fingerprint or Face ID in place of the PIN. So once you've set the PIN up, the next time you go in, it'll ask you, do you want to use Face ID instead, or fingerprint, as it does with majority of the apps you might be familiar with these days. So we made sure that we're able to launch the app in the first place. We've given additional authentication to access the app, and now we want to protect the data within the app. So we can control how the data is handled within the app, like restricting data sharing between a managed app or a protected app and an unprotected app, preventing the data from being saved locally or to unsecure locations, controlling copy and paste actions, blocking screen capture, and limiting interactions with device-based AI services. One of the big concerns around Copilot when it first came out is obviously it collecting data, and Microsoft made sure and committed to make that data that uses your corporate Copilot is maintained within the organization and isn't shared anywhere else. If you were using something like Apple Intelligence within the Outlook application on a corporate app, technically it's collecting that information and it's leaving the protected ecosystem. So therefore you may want to disable those services. When app protection is applied to a user, it's captured in Intune so that you can do some basic reporting on which apps are being used and on what devices. So we're able to get the user, the app they were using, the model of the device, and the operating system version, which is usually useful for things like Cyber Essentials. And what we also are able to do by that information being captured is to perform a selective wipe action against the device, which will remove all the corporate profiles and protected all the corporate profiles from protected apps. We can target that as a specific user that a device might have, which has been lost or stolen, or we can do it at a user altogether. So if a user's left the organization, we can target a remote wipe or selective wipe against that user, and all the devices that they've potentially used, it will go and start removing those profiles from those devices. Now, I must add that all of Microsoft's mobile apps are multi-tenanted. That means that you can have multiple accounts within a single app. And any of these protections that we're applying will only ever apply when they're in the corporate profile. So if they've got their corporate email and their personal email, when they're in the personal one, they can copy and paste to their heart's content. They can save locally. So only when they go over to a corporate-based email, that's when those protections will kick in. The app protection policies are available for practically all of the Microsoft applications and a handful of third-party ones. But these protections can also be added to any custom developed app by including the Intune SDK in the development project, which Microsoft quite nicely provide no cost. Now, I do just have a quick pre-prepared demonstration of app protection in action, just so you can see what's going on. So in here, I'm just going to do, well, we're just doing the simple action of trying to, so we're obviously just adding the account to begin with. You'll see that the access is immediately evaluated and the user will be informed, there we go, that the app is managed and needs to be, that's actually an iOS case. If you're using Android, they receive the message to say the app is being managed, but they don't need to restart the app. When they go back in, it's now, as you'll see, asking for a PIN to be set if you don't have one at the moment, and we can configure that PIN to be anywhere between 4 to 16 characters. Now the app's protected, we're just going to try a quick, simple action of copying and pasting. We've set the restriction to a maximum of 10 characters. So if I copy the word office, it lets me do that absolutely no problem. But when I go back and try to take a whole sentence, instead of the text that I've copied, it pastes the message saying that only 10 characters are allowed, and it's blocked by the organization. And lastly, just going to go into another email, and I'm going to go and try and save the save it, go to share, save it as a copy, and say sharing is not allowed. So it's not letting me take that of the application. So now move on to conditional access. So I mentioned earlier, conditional access isn't included as part of the Intune Plan 1 or 2. This is part of the Entra ID P1. Again, included in E3s, E5s, business premiums, and the like. Conditional access is Microsoft's policy engine that ensures access to resources only provided under the right conditions, using factors like user or group membership, device compliance, location, the application or resource being accessed, and risk signals from Entra and Defender. If configured correctly, it evaluates in real time to make access decisions. The controls available in conditional access are very flexible and granular, so that you can apply different stipulations to specific operating systems, resources, or security actions like registering MFA. This will then give you different behaviors and expectations depending on what you're using and how you're using it. And sometimes it's a bit of a pitfall that some organizations fall into, where they try to be a bit too generic on their conditional access, and it's not quite tailored for the way that they need it to be. But for example, on a non-corporate Windows device, me personally, I would typically recommend blocking users from logging into locally installed applications, because we don't necessarily have the control of that locally installed application. So I'm just going to block you from it on a Windows desktop altogether. But I'll allow you to sign in on a browser as long as you're able to satisfy multi-factor authentication. And in regards to multi-factor authentication, I could also set it so that you could only register authentication methods from an existing corporate device in an office location, or if existing multi-factor authentication has been provided in the first place. The examples there. So once we've determined the different situations in which people might be accessing, we then have to determine what they have to provide to be able to gain access. Microsoft provides several requirements to choose from, and this could include multi-factor authentication, device compliance, device joined state, so is it hybrid joined or Entra joined? Has app protection been applied in that scenario? Has the user accepted our company or the company's terms of use? The last of those typically used in guest user access scenarios. But you can configure it so that either multiple requirements need to be met or one out of a selection. So, for example, the device must either be compliant or have app protection applied, or require MFA be provided unless coming from a specific IP like an office. So I'm working in the office, I don't have to MFA. Take the device out of the office, I do have to MFA. These grant requirements can also be set as an explicit block as well. So for example, you're a UK-based company and you only want, you don't want people accessing from outside of the UK. So we can configure trusted locations to say that, yeah, if you're not signing in, or if you're signing in from outside of the UK, you'll just be immediately blocked and not be allowed access. So then, following on from that, once you've satisfied the requirements, you've got in, you're now using it, we can then apply session controls on top of this. So this could be things like enforcing restrictions, like limiting, like blocking or monitoring downloads, re-authentication requirements, or browser persistence. So again, for example, I might set it so that when signing into a browser on an unmanaged device, I need to re-authenticate every 24 hours, or each time I start a new browser session. But if I'm using a managed device, I only need to re-authenticate every 7 days, and the browser could retain the authentication token, meaning I don't need to re-sign in every time I start a new session within that 7-day period. Then in addition to those standard controls, you can also use advanced app control enforcements in conjunction with cloud app security, which gives you even further granular control on specific cloud services to restrict things like downloads, screen prints, normal printing, and copy and paste actions. So again, just a very short, even shorter than the last one, but a very short demonstration. In this one, I've configured conditional access to require that app protection is applied to the device to gain access, and the user doesn't have app protection assigned to them. So they'll go through the usual sign-in and essentially be told, no, you can't get there. You can't get there from here, and contact IT. So although conditional access can be quite complex to configure, it takes quite a bit of thought to make sure you've covered everything sufficiently. From an end user standpoint, it's quite straightforward. They sign in, either they can or they can't. If they can't, they'll ask you the question and you'll justify it. So now I'm going to cover the three main scenarios when it comes to device management in the wild. The first scenario is an unenrolled personal device. So this is going to be the most straightforward setup and the simplest user experience. And as the name scenario kind of suggests, this is essentially BYOD. There are no device level management. No device level management will be applied in this scenario. So I'd like to meet Joe. He's an AI-generated junior employee of what I've coined the Happy Fun Time Company. He's a junior employee. He isn't eligible for a company phone. Instead, the company provides a small monthly allowance in his salary to cover some of the cost of using his own phone for work. It's just simple things like accessing emails and chat on Teams. The company generally prefers not to have personal devices enrolled in Intune as it is in this use case, app protection, as the company feels that app protection will suitably protect anything that Joe might be doing with corporate data. So in this scenario, app protection is used, and when an approved app is used to connect to the corporate resources, any data contained within the app itself or between other apps is protected by policy. Conditional access is then used to ensure that app protection is applied before granting access on on either the app or browser. So if the user tries to use, so if Joe tries to use the native Mail app or Safari or Chrome, they will be blocked from access. As I mentioned just a moment ago, this is a nice, simple and effective approach to this kind of usage. We can generate those basic reports for when people ask who's using what and on what, and also in worst case scenario, we can remotely wipe the data, the corporate data, from those applications that are being used. The second scenario is personally enrolled. Now, whether you do unenrolled personal or personally enrolled is ultimately going to depend on your organization's point of view when it comes to security. You may dictate that devices have to be enrolled in Intune to be allowed to use, to be able to access corporate data. So these devices are personally owned, but they're enrolled by the user through the company portal. When they're enrolled, you are then able to apply basic device level controls like pins, passcodes, screen timeouts, blocking of organizational data and accounts to cloud services and network connections like VPN or Wi-Fi. If it's an Android device, you also benefit from the Android Enterprise solution, which gives you further configuration options that are applied at the work profile level. And that's purely just because of the difference in the way that Apple and Google have approached enterprise management. Apple, there's no lines between, no visible lines between corporate and personal. Google have gone down the route of keeping them as visibly separate as possible. By enrolling the device, we then also gain the capability to assign applications as available or required, so we can make sure that the users have everything that they might need on the device. So we're going to come back to Joe for a moment. So he's been working at Happy Fun Time for a while now, and he's just got himself a promotion. In his position, the company was still preferring to do a BY, or generally still prefers a BYOD first policy. But now with his new role, he needs to use a couple of apps that have been custom developed and aren't available in the public store. Because of this and the sensitive nature of the data in those apps, Joe is now required to enroll his phone so that apps can be installed, security configuration be applied. We can also evaluate the compliance of the device to make sure it meets what we need in place. As I've mentioned before, enrolling his phone was straightforward enough. IT had to add him to a group, which gave him the permission to be able to enroll the personal device in the first place. By default, that's been blocked. And all he needs to do is download the company portal and follow the on-screen instructions. Because the device now has a managed PIN and passcode, which has been enforced by the policy, what we can do is make the app protection policy experience a little bit more graceful. And although it's the same app protection policy that was being applied, we can actually now disable the app level PIN because we are managing the device PIN. Once he's enrolled, he can use that company portal to then download and install those particular company apps that he needs. And because of those apps being on the device, he's now subject to a new conditional access policy, which requires that both app protection be applied and the device be compliant. Now, while as I mentioned earlier, the configuration policy would have done most of that heavy lifting, there is the potential that he might need to still update the device to the latest version if he hasn't done so already, but he'll have to do that manually because we can't control updates on devices that have been enrolled in this scenario. With that device being enrolled, though, we can perform some additional remote actions. Now we can do a full device wipe if it's been lost or stolen, or we can initiate a retire. So if Joe left the company in 6 months' time, doing a retire is a graceful removal. Again, it's just removing the management profile and all the corporate apps and data, leaving all the personal elements of the device completely intact. We can also initiate a simple PIN or passcode reset. So on an iOS device, if someone's forgotten the PIN number, we can reset it to the point where it gives it a one-time unlock. As soon as the user gets in, they are then asked to set a new PIN code. And on an Android device, Intune will provide you with a temporary passcode, which you can then give to the user. And again, once they've unlocked, they'll immediately be prompted to set a new passcode. The final scenario is corporate enrolled. So this scenario caters for a whole range of use cases, like corporate, strict corporate only, corporate but with personal being permitted, a shared device across a number of people, specific function device like Teams, meeting room devices or phones, and kiosk devices. Android is has another bonus with this type of enrollment, where we can leverage what's called Entra shared mode, where the device is locked to an Entra sign-in screen. When the user logs into the device, it asks them to set up a temporary PIN code. They'll use that during the time that they're logged into it, and then at the end of the day, they'll sign out of the device, and it will remove all of the user's data and bring it back to the login screen, ready for the next person. So this has proved valuable for a lot of companies that employ shift workers, that potentially in a factory or warehouse. They walk in, they pick a device off a trolley, they don't care which one, sign in, use it for the day. At the end of the day, pop it back on the trolley. Next shift comes in, they can pick it up, and away they go. It's as if it's never been used. So in Joe's case, he's spent a bit of time in his new role. He's now been given a team to manage, and his team members are field engineers. So in addition to their personal unenrolled devices, which they're using for email and chat, they also need to be given a dedicated second device, which is used specifically for on-site jobs. Depending on the site, they may use it for one application or potentially multiple apps. These devices have been provisioned using an automated enrollment process, where it's been pre-assigned its configuration, so that when it's set up out of the box, configuration, the correct configuration, lockdown, apps, user experience is applied. And so this will either be a single app kiosk mode, where the app will auto launch and it will be locked to that app. They won't have access to any other applications or even the home screen. Or it could be a multi-app kiosk, where on an iOS device you'll have the standard home screen, but on an Android device you can employ a custom home screen, which is then tailored to display only the applications that you want it to do, and again have access to only the device settings that you want them to. These devices, they don't, as part of the setup, they don't ask for Apple IDs, they don't ask for Google IDs. There is no there's no specific user associated with them. They don't need access to any of the background cloud services. And we have a full complement of device controls, which again, the full wipe, but now having things like geolocating, a lost mode if it's an iOS, or taking activation lock, remotely restarting a device, and diagnostic collection. Conditional access when using these devices requires device compliance only, and this is because the custom apps have not been configured with Intune in mind. They're legacy, older applications talking to old systems, so we're not able to add the API in, so we can't have app protection in place. So compliance is going to be sufficient. But again, because of the use case, we can feel more confident that we can be happy with that, because the only way this device can really be set up is by you issuing it to someone and it being pre-configured in the background. So in that corporate enrolled, that was just kind of one very kind of, one scenario out of many. We have devices which completely business focused. As I mentioned earlier, there's no personal use. They don't have, again, Apple IDs, Google IDs. They don't have access to the store. The only apps they can have on there are ones that you've approved through your personal through your private Intune store. Or you can have it where it's corporate first and personal second. So it's set up as a corporate device. You manage the whole thing, but you're allowing users to add their own personal Apple IDs or Google IDs. Again, because when they're going to go and use it for business purposes, the app protection is going to kick in, which means it's still contained within that managed ecosystem. Now, with the automated enrollment on those corporate enrolled devices, mentioned earlier, it does integrate fully with Business Manager and Google Zero Touch. So, in summary, our three, in order to make sure that mobiles are being used for are secure and protected while they're being used for work, the three main solutions you need to consider or look to utilize are Intune, app protection, and conditional access. Intune to secure and configure the device itself for whichever usage scenario or scenarios you need to offer to your users. App protection to make sure that no matter what device is being used, that the app within the data, so within the data stored within the app is protected at all times, kept within that managed app ecosystem and can't be taken out. And conditional access, make sure that the basic price of entry is paid in full before they can even establish a connection and access corporate data in the first place. Now, I know obviously it's been quite a lot of information there and a little bit kind of whistle stop, but just want to say thank you everyone for your time. I hope that the session has been useful. And now I'll pass it back to Vicky to go through any questions that might have come up during the session.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Really useful. And I hope that it's been useful to everybody that's attended the session today. As Mark said, we have gone through a lot. And I appreciate there may be some questions that you might have, and we'd love to go through those questions now. If you do, as advised earlier, there is a Q&A on the toolbar. If you could pop your questions in there, I can read them out to Mark, and hopefully he will be able to answer them for us. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate that. So Richard says, Mark, that we are currently meeting the CIS Microsoft 365 benchmark V2, but need to recreditate this year to V5. We have app protection in place across our tenants in V5. We now have to do the following. 5.2.29 L1, ensure a managed device is required for authentication. A large amount of our users use personal devices with the Microsoft Auth app, which isn't covered by app protection. And our corporate devices are currently in another MDM, soon to be put into Intune. With this new conditional access, can users' personal devices be enrolled into the Intune via the company portal and then be classed as compliant and be Microsoft Entra registered? Or do they have to be fully enrolled and be Microsoft Entra joined, which I know users will not be happy to do with their own personal devices as the entry level control they have, especially on the iOS?
Right, so I mean, I guess in the simplest way, yes. So as long as Intune and your enrollment is all set up, users on personal devices, as I mentioned earlier, will be able to download the company portal application, sign in, follow the on-screen instructions, and as part of that process, Microsoft have always been very clear. There is a screen during the setup or during the enrollment where it says, by doing this, this is what we can see and this is what we can't see. And there is a big distinction between a personal device and a corporate device. By default, any device that is enrolled using the company portal manual method will identify itself as a personal device. And with that, what it will do is it will collect application inventory, but only of the applications which have been installed through the Intune, through Intune. So it's not going to collect information about any applications that they might have installed personally from the App Store. And the other one is, if there's a it's an iOS device, there's going to be a phone number in Intune. It will only show you or only collect the last 4 digits of the phone number rather than the full one. Whereas if it's a corporate device, it will collect all of those. So, in this case, yes, you would be able to allow them to enroll, and then once it's enrolled in Intune, you can then assign the compliance policy to it to then evaluate and report on the compliance. Because yes, if you're looking at meeting CIS, there'll be all sorts of things like minimum and supported operating systems being in place, and that's exactly where that conditional access where the compliance policy would then dictate whether what the minimum version that you need to be on, and conditional access will obviously make sure that it is compliant.
Thank you. Perfect. Thank you very much. Another question is, can exceptions be added in app protection so that I can share with specific unmanaged apps, for example, WhatsApp?
Yes, it can. Obviously, you do need to still take into consideration what the overall impact of doing that is. But yes, again, within the app protection policy, we configure how we want sharing to work. Either managed can share with unmanaged, or managed can only share within managed. And yeah, for some customers that has caused a problem where they work with an application, potentially WhatsApp. It could be any kind of application, other cloud service which isn't applicable for app protection. And in that case, yes, we can get the information of the application and add it as an exception. So in that copy and paste example, I wouldn't be able to copy and paste to the Notes app, but I would be able to copy and paste to this other application. But as I say, it's always just keeping in mind what else does that open that up to, and potentially are there just specific people or use cases that need that exception? Because you can have multiple app protection policies depending on your role, part in the business, where different controls apply to different user types, or potentially different controls apply to different applications. So yeah, if it's specifically just between Teams and WhatsApp, you could have Teams have that exception and everything else not have that exception.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And the last question I can see is, when a device is personally enrolled, what information does Intune collect from the device?
So technically kind of covered that one earlier. Just a moment ago, it will collect all of the hardware information. It will collect it will collect application information, application inventory, but again, only the applications which have been delivered by Intune. So it is quite clear as to what it can and what it can't during that enrollment process. But it only takes kind of what it feels it needs to be able to provide without breaking general privacy laws.
Thank you. Everybody, thank you very much once again for attending. Like I said, I do know that taking time out of your busy schedules isn't always easy, so we really do appreciate your interest today, and we would love to hear your feedback on the session. And there is a lot of information that we've gone to, and not every bit of it is going to be relevant to your needs right now, or there may be more information that you require, just based really on your business needs and requirements today. So what we would love to also do is for free one-to-one sessions to really discuss your business, how you operate, and how device security could work for you, and everything that Mark has gone through with you today. So you can do that by scanning our QR code or visiting the URL that you can see here. This session actually will be sent to you as well. So we have recorded the session and it will be sent to you via link afterwards, so you can see that information on there as well. We thank you for joining us once again, and please do join us on our next webinar, which is Tuesday the 12th of May, once again at 2 o'clock, which is tailoring Microsoft Fabric, governance and admin for the enterprise. Again, you can register today at chest.co.uk/events. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. Have a wonderful evening and take care.
Thank you.